So team, I'm the last before the fun time at the end of the day. Let's jump into it. Maybe I'll start with myself. The more important part of me, I talk fast and eat fast because I'm number 12 of 13 kids. So I had to talk fast and eat fast just to make it growing up. So as we go through today, it's definitely your time. So interrupt me. Feel free to raise your hand, interrupt, ask questions as we go through. It doesn't need to be a rote presentation. I want to keep you guys engaged, keep you understanding what we're going through. So the more engagement, the better. Everybody got that? So questions first. So how many of you guys have used any Gen AI at work? So at work. Which ones? Claude? Gemini?
Notebook LM.
Notebook LM? ChatGPT? Copilot. Any others? Awesome. Awesome, awesome. So what's been the best so far? I like the answers, team. Frankly, I agree most there. It depends on the application. PDF Vision's really good with Claude. It's very good at instruction following. Some of the new GPT-5 stuff, really, really good, but really, really slow, so if latency. So as we go through this, feel free to ask questions. Part of what I want is you to engage. So let's jump in a little bit. I'm going to try to quickly get to building an agent and get us out of here a little early, but every time I've ever said that, it ends up going long. So feel free as we go through this to jump into it. I want to hit a couple kind of things that are important because a lot of people will think of agents as kind of like random acts of intelligence. And I kind of say, that's not really agents. We don't want anything random with agents. We want it very specific. We want it very targeted. So we think of agents as they roll up their digital sleeves and do work. And if they're not doing work, they're probably not a great agent. We probably picked the wrong use case to do it. So when we think about it and think about the world out there, how many of you guys have used RPA in your jobs? Anybody? Only one or two? How about Excel or Google Sheets? You think those will ever get replaced? I don't think so. Agents should give us a much bigger multiple. And what we look at is, to do agents well, there's a few things you need. Number one, there's got to be a high value outcome. If you don't have a high value outcome, the agent doesn't get used, it kind of goes to the wayside, and it doesn't kind of drive through. The second thing is we want it to follow a standard work. So I want it to go from A to B to C. The agent I'll build today is an invoice processing agent. I don't want it to get creative. I don't want AI to be creative about how it processes an invoice and decide tomorrow, hold up, it can do it better by not updating SAP or by not updating Salesforce, because that always has a problem, right? That would be a problem for me. So what I want it to be follow standard work, and I want it to be data driven. It needs to be enriched. It needs to make sure it's reading the documents correctly, it's accessing the data correctly, and it's doing the correct job. So when we think about this, when we think about agents, we really think of high value outcome, standard work, and data driven. Make sense, team? Awesome. I was just sitting through the back of the last session. What's the one thing that came up at the end of it? Probably 10 times. Data. Agents are only as good as the data you use, but if you think about it, we don't spend much time thinking about the whole big data and analytics. That's in the past, right? That happened a long time ago. And then from that big data and analytics came kind of ML and predictive analytics, and all of a sudden now I can do shopping cart analysis and figure out who's doing what. So then came the ML, and then LLMs came in and said, hold up, I can harvest all this to be more intelligent. I can go guess with probabilistic what the right words are for the next one. And that's really the onset of LLMs. Then Gen AI and probabilistic outcomes. If you look at it, agents need to be above that. It can't be probabilistic. It has to be deterministic. The work has to happen the same every time. How many of you guys have entered the same thing into ChatGPT 10 times? Do me a favor. Think of one question you want to ask. Every day for the next week, ask the same question. Anybody gamble to say, I bet you don't get the same answer? You'll probably get similar answers. 9 of 10 will be similar answers. One will be completely like drunk. It'll be like that, just walked out of the bar and answered it badly. So when you're thinking about it, we really want that deterministic work, and that's what makes an agent really, really good. So just when we're thinking about it. But the other thing about agents, and the reason they start to get exciting, is they do learn and adapt. When we build out today, I'm going to show you some examples. You're going to see where it fails on a database update, and then it goes and gets the schema of the database, and then it updates the database, right? Because it can do those types of things when you start enabling it. And the shift from analytics to execution. So if you think about analytics, that's where all the data work has been done. So the big data and analytics layers, it's always been on the data side. Is what we're moving to now is the execution side, and how do I make the execution work better? And then leveraging all the tools. When we think about the world, how many of you guys, I heard Gemini in here, how many of you guys have used Copilot? So Copilot, Gemini, we got a bunch of other ones. If you think we kind of look at the world in 3 key areas of agents. Number one is there's purpose-built. 11x, Sierra, those are customer contact center type agents. They're designed to answer the phone for you, do the work for you, resolve that person's inquiry for you. There's also the do-it-yourself frameworks. Think of LangChain. Anybody in here use LangChain? We'll see if there's any Python devs in here. Nope. Anybody use Crew? Nope. Gotcha. Those are do-it-yourself frameworks. I can hire some Stanford grads. I can do interesting things there, but it's on a Python dev side. Then there's the ecosystem-centric. We got Microsoft Copilot. We got Google. I'm surprised. Anybody in here got Agentforce? What? Agentforce? Use it? No. Is what you're seeing is the ecosystem-centric agents there. So they're really intended to help you with that ecosystem. They're really intended to make that ecosystem better together. I can go use Microsoft Excel. I can embed agents with it to do work. Those are awesome things. Those are Microsoft-centric. They're Copilot-centric agents. We look at the world and we think about it a little differently when we think about agents. Agents will span everything from HR to sales operations to order operations, all the way through to front office and helping sales reps do better work, helping manage inventory, et cetera. So we believe there's going to be this notion of an enterprise agent factory, and that's where we think Semaphore fits in, to help you go build out those agents across the enterprise.
Where does N8N and Make and MindStudio fit into that?
So good question. So if you ask Satya Nadella, he would tell you there's 640 agent companies out there. We're one of those, just like those guys are one of those, and guys or gals. So if you look at it, I think N8N would come from the RPA space because it's been around about 10 years if I looked at it last. So they came from the RPA space and they're moving into the agent space. So they're trying to do similar to us. They're trying to be an agent platform with us. Good question. Any other questions before I keep going? What's your guys' thoughts? You think there'll be an agent factory in the enterprises to help build the agents? Yes. I got one yes. Anybody say no? Ain't gonna do that. It'll just be part of the system. I'll give you the inverse answer. How many of the systems you're using today don't already have an agent component to it? SAP just announced Joule, Salesforce has it, Workday has it. Each one of these systems are also extending with agents, right? There's fundamental, agents will be proliferate. They will be in the applications and they will be spanning applications. Where we see the most interest is in spanning those applications to do end-to-end processes. So that's where we see the work. What do we think is important about agents? And I think we started a little bit with the discussion earlier, how many are Python devs in here? The answer was basically nobody, right? We are in your camp. So today, you're not gonna see me touch a line of code and we're gonna build an agent. Our fundamental belief is the person that defines the agent should be the same person that when somebody walked in the door and I'm training them to how to do that job, that's probably the person to define the agent, the person that understands the work to be done. The one that processes those invoices on a daily basis, that wrote the standard operating procedure for how to build that. Those are the right people to define it, which means it's a natural language runbook. It can't be something else. It can't be a YAML file. It can't be something. So it's got to be a natural language runbook. Number two, it's got to be enriched. So there's kind of 3 core types of data that an agent needs. First area of data is traditional database access. And having a metadata layer that gives us access to the Snowflakes of the world, the Redshifts of the world, the ADLS of the world is a really, really big deal. The second and third are semi-structured and unstructured. Things like Excel, we talked about it earlier. It's one of the most common data formats, right? Hey, I get this big Excel spreadsheet that represents the 3,600 line items for the invoices that I'm processing, right? How do I go process that through? So Excel is a semi-structured format, and then there's unstructured, PDFs. I get invoices, I get payment remittance all day long. Those represent the unstructured, I would say, where they come in, they get scanned, or they come in through email. We got to process those. So data-driven accuracy is a really, really big deal. And the last one is it has to work in a way that the enterprise can deal with. So the deployment lifecycle of an agent has to be through a standard SDLC lifecycle because I have to trust it. It has to enable my IT department to trust this as much as my business needs to trust this. So it's both sides of it. So when we think about these three things, they're what we would consider the cornerstones of building an agent. When we think about core agents and categories of agents, we think in three areas, and almost always, there's multiple of these. And I'll start with the first one. Anybody know what a payment remittance is? Raise your hand if you do. I'll give you the simple answer. When somebody orders something from you and you ship it to them, they let you know you paid for it. And what they do is they wire you money, typically, and then they give you a payment remittance that says, hey, by the way, I just sent you $5 million. It landed in your Chase account. Here's the invoices that it was for. To do that at Emerson, one of the things they did is they had RPA doing that. And what it had to do is read out of an email inbox. It had to parse that PDF document, and then it had to process it through and then reconcile it back to JP Morgan Chase to say, hey, did this money come in? Did the money reconcile, et cetera? They had about a 20% accuracy rate with that use case using RPA. According to them, and if you go look at our website, Paul is actually quoted, they're at about 89% accurate now with AI agents doing that. So we read out of the inbox, we look at the document, we reconcile it to the back end, and then we process it straight through to Chase. If you look at that problem, that's an interesting problem because they got a team in Malaysia, a team in India, and a team in Costa Rica all helping do that back office processing. Around 50 people doing that today. So we're trying to help them. Their biggest problem with those 50 people is they can't keep them hired long enough. Their turnover in that group, their average turnover is about 9 months in that group because people just don't want to sit there and read an email, read a PDF document, and then process it, right? Like, do you want your kids to do that? Like, I don't want my kids doing that job, right? I'm not saying it's terrible, but the fact is those are perfect agent jobs. Let the agent do the work for you. So it's a really good example. Point being, that's a document-centric one. We've got another one, and I'll show you in a little bit an example of it. But the data-centric. So when I take that and extend that to include Oracle ERP, to include Oracle database, to include Snowflake data, et cetera, now we're starting to get into the data area. And the third area is the AI assistance, is where you normally see most non-agent, I'll say random AI or random acts of intelligence, tends to be in this AI assistant category. The good and the bad of AI assistance is it helps to figure out what's interesting. So I'll give you a great example. A large manufacturing company, probably I think top 1 or top 2 in the world, privately held. They have 17 facilities in the US, 17 plants. The entire leadership team each week gets a status update on those plants. So it's about a one-pager that they have to read each week for 17 plants to understand how each plant did last week, which lines were down, which customers were impacted, what employee problems they had, kind of any highlights of what happened. Seems pretty simple. You take that times 17. Now you think about a Friday night. I'm reading 17 of these one-pagers just to get an update on what's going on. We take that, we push it into a knowledge base, we summarize it each week for them. What came out of that is 2 more agents. The first agent is, now that I can look at that, I can actually look at over time, I can reconcile over time and say, hold up, we're having the same problem across 6 factories or 7 factories. Why don't I create a work order to go fix it across all 6 of them rather one at a time? But they don't reconcile that when you're looking at it every week and you're looking at it times, how many weeks are there in a year that I'm getting this notice, et cetera. So it drives all of that downstream now that I got the summary on the front end. So those are the types of things where AI Assistant is kind of a step 1, but driving the work items to go fix it on the back end is step 2. So think about document, data, and then assistance. The other area I'll say is adoption of agents. When you think about adoption of agents, how many of you trust AI? How many would rather replace your doctor with an AI? I candidly would. but I wouldn't have my surgeon replaced with AI, right? But my doctor, I think AI memorizes a lot more than my doctor does at this point. So was there a question back there?
Yeah. Jumping back to the last one. When you refer to document, is it only like the structured, semi-structured, unstructured data? What about imagery?
So images are completely acceptable. I'll say that there's spectrums of image. PDF at the simplest, which is like type, document potentially. And then there's the other side of this, which is a plant manager that wrote Etch-a-Sketch on a piece of paper, a napkin, tried to scan it in, and that's a secondary PDF, that's an image. First one, 100%. We're gonna get extremely high resolution on. If it's handwritten and it's really rough sketch, we don't do as well. And those are things where we just gotta work through it.
Like photography as well?
Photography we can typically identify. So if you think about the best ways to test this is like whether you're using Gemini or you're using ChatGPT or you're using Claude, hand it the document and say, what is this? Give me the details. And if it reads it well, we can do an extremely good job at it. If it doesn't read it well, we're gonna struggle. So it's the best way to test.
Okay.
Because we're gonna leverage the LLM for that stuff.
Sure.
Good question. The reason I went through that whole doctor and surgeon discussion is there's a trust factor, right? I don't trust a robot to cut into me. At some point I probably will, but I don't trust him. But to give me insights, I'll take an AI to give me some insights and give me some kind of ideas. There's a trust factor that's built up over time with that. When we think of that trust, it comes through kind of, we think 4 factors. Number 1 is security. How do we make sure the agent platform is secure? We fortunately run within your cloud and near your data in things like Snowflake and Snowflake Marketplace. The second thing is the accuracy. Accuracy is not LLM hallucination. Accuracy is leveraging data to validate that the LLM came up with the right answer. So it's a different thing. Speed, how fast can I build this agent? How fast can I iterate on it to get it out the door? And then extensibility, how much can I extend it with things like MCP to be able to plug it into my enterprise systems? So I can take it all the way from I read that document that you just gave me, that PDF potentially, or image, TIFF, all the way through to it updated my SAP system. So that's kind of when we think about it. These are the currency of agentic AI. Each one of these 4 have to be kind of checked before people will trust it in the enterprise. So what are the pieces that make up an agent? Before we get going on this, any ideas or any opinions? We kind of think of it as 3 areas. So think left brain, right brain, and arms. Left brain, it's the business process, LLMs, and a business expert. You notice we have to have the business expert? If we don't have the business expert, agents don't work well. We don't know how your business runs. We don't know what happens when the invoice doesn't reconcile, the payment remittance doesn't reconcile. So you need these pieces, and those are part of what we call the runbook. The best person to do runbooks is the person that can write that standard operating procedure. If you already have a standard operating procedure, we can import that in and use that to generate the agent. On the data sources side, this is the enrichment side. Structured data, data APIs, documents tend to represent the data side. And then the work that gets done, we touch those enterprise apps. So think of that as the arms and legs. Now that I read everything, now that I understand and validated, now I'm going to go enter this into my line of business system. So that's the arms and legs of an agent. Are we tired of this? Should we just go build an agent? Anybody tired of slides today? Raise your hand if you want me just to jump in to build an agent. Holy cow, you guys want more slides. Only one person.
Well, a couple questions. First off,
You only get one question, so I'd be selective.
okay.
I'm
How are you
teasing.
handling an agent's tool calling when they have a tendency to use every tool you give them, whether they need it or not?
Who knows what tool calling is first? It's a great question, but tool callings, there's a couple in here. So one of the things you can do with agents, and typically agents do, is they invoke tools. They tell the LLM, go use this tool, and then the LLM will invoke the tool. The problem is if I expose the LLM to lots of tools, it doesn't know the right tool to call. Should I call the update to SAP or should I call the update to Oracle? If they both say update, how does the agent know which one to use? That's the problem you're highlighting. Is what we do is we do a couple things. So number one is we do, as part of kind of best practices for building agents, we limit the number of tools that are exposed. Number two is we filter out any tools that are unused for the specific agent. So we control that down. So things like, I give you an update, not an insert. or I give you a update, not a select, as an exposed kind of capability. We can also put guardrails around it. We also, as part of the runbook, we can explicitly call out the actions that we want to do, which represent those tool calls. And we'll show you that in a second. So we'll show you that.
Okay, can I ask one more? How are you
I was completely teasing, by the way. You can ask as many questions as you want.
How are you handling model selection for cost, for inference cost and latency on the back end? I mean, like if you use a Mind Studio, I can use a small Nova model that costs 0.003 cents per million out tokens, or I can use Claude 4.5 that's like $10 per million out.
So just so everybody understands the question first. Everybody got that question? The complexity is, do I want to use ChatGPT 5 with high reasoning, or do I want to use 4.0, which is super fast, super cheap, kind of out the door? Those are selections that you make as part of the agent. So I can have multiple agents, and I can have an agent hierarchy. Each agent, I select which model to use. So I can define for this subtask, I want it to use high reasoning because I want it to always do that right. And then for these dumb tasks, I can use 4.0 because it always does the right thing. It's just not a complex task. So you can select it. Team, just so everybody understands, is what it is, the different models represent different reasoning from no reasoning all the way up to extremely high reasoning. The good news in that model is I can get really smart agents and really smart models. The problem with that is really smart models are really expensive and they're really slow on latency. So one of the things I'm trying to get our product team to do is show me a three-way chart that has latency, cost, and accuracy, right? Because those are the three factors that I need to make a decision on every time I'm deciding on an agent, which one of those factors matters most to me. And I'll give you an example. On a conversational agent where somebody's interacting with it, it doesn't have to be as accurate. On a worker agent, you'll hear me talk about worker agents where it's just back-end processing every time. It actually has to be accurate because no one's going to see that unless it recognizes an error. So those, I would use different models for each one of those. And great question. I'm going to get that slide yet that shows those three axes.
Because there's usually about 70 or 80 models to choose from inside one of these platforms. So if people don't understand the model landscape, there's more work to this than meets the eye.
So one of the things we're in prototype right now is dynamically selecting. If we know your runbook, we know the complexity of the runbook, therefore we can pick the model for you. So why would we, I don't even know, and I spend my days looking at these stupid things. It's really gonna be hard for anybody to actually know. And use your bias. So I'm either an OpenAI guy or I'm an Anthropic Claude guy, and each one of those represents a whole different set of models that have different strengths and weaknesses. So Haiku is just 4.5 of Haiku is just released super fast, super low reasoning, super cost-effective model from Claude. So some of those things matter. Great questions though, really good questions. You know, rather than go through any more slides, let's just jump in and build one. I think it's better. Is anybody else excited? Okay. So how many of you guys jumped into our website and downloaded Studio today? Got no takers. If you want to, you can actually go to our website. You can hit the download and you can download what I'm going to do right now. I will warn you though, you do have to have an LLM. So when you configure, it's going to ask you to connect to control room. Cancel out of that, but you will need an API key to an LLM. So just before you do that, make sure you got the LLM details. And let me even show you. So this is Studio. I'll go to settings here. I'll go to models, and these are all the different models. So your question's awesome. So I notice I got Claude 3.5. I got Azure. I've got Claude 3.7, 3.5, 4 Opus, 4 Sonnet. And you can see I got GPT-5. So these represent all the different models that are out there. Every agent's different. The notion of only having one choice, like a lot of people say, well, Jamie, I can do stuff with Copilot. I'm like, if you look at Copilot's default model, it's 4.0. That model's a year old. That's like talking to a 3-year-old on a relative scale to today, which is talking to a college grad. So you're literally using that silly of a model, if you will, to do work. So it's a really, really big deal. Anyway, I won't run through all of it, but when you come into it, here's what our Studio is. This is where we define agents. Let me show you a couple example agents, and then we'll jump in and build one. So template agents, build your own agent, and build with Psi. You know I'm going to keep engaging. Anybody got any ideas why we call it Psi? Holy cow, it is Monday night at 4. Semaphore AI. We're not very good at marketing. We're going to up our game, I promise. I say that joking. There's a whole set of agents in here. I'll cover them in the worker and conversational agents in a second. And then there's a set of actions. How many of you in here have heard of MCP? Other than me saying it. It is awesome. Super cool stuff. But you get the challenges that you'd expect. I'll come back and show you some MCP. Notice MCP servers here. I'll show you in a second why you care about that. Data sources. This is data that I want to pull in to make my agents smarter. So noticing some PG Vector in here, some Postgres, Snowflake, a couple, 3 knowledge bases in here, and then some Redshift in here as well. So different data stores that I can access. The worker agents. Worker agents aren't like an interaction model. So you think when you log into ChatGPT and you do work, you talk to it and interact with it. Think of worker agents something where I just do payment remittance. It automatically reads the email inbox, grabs that email, grabs the PDF out of it, parses that PDF, looks at it and compares it to my line of business system, and then updates the system. No touch to a human. Those are what we call worker agents. We're going to do conversational because they're a lot more fun to show than worker agents, because worker agents are not that exciting to look at. Let's jump into one. And I'll first show you an example of, this is one of our customers. Let me just start with a new chat here, and I'll say, this is one of our customers that is trying to figure out which oil fields to buy. Fortunately, when the oil prices go down, oil fields get cheaper. Over the last year, it's been a good time to buy oil fields. They're trying to figure out which ones to buy and who to buy from. So what this agent helps them with is figuring that out. So if I go look at guide, now it's going to go look at what are the top wells out there. This is all of the guide to help somebody use a conversational agent, right? So it's all the helpers to say, hey, show me this, show me that. So now it's going to tell me what are the top producing wells in this area, so we can see these. Also summary, what's the water, etc. Anybody know what recompletion is? Glad you don't. All it means is you make the well produce more oil, typically by doing what's called fracking, which means you push water down, frack it, lets it flow better, it flows in. But now I could go look at all the well history. This is an agent that is trying to summarize and help you do work. In this case, and we'll run through a couple of steps here. Now it's saying for the number 1 well, which is the Teddy Federal 12X5F, show me the production history. So now it's going and saying what's going on with this. So now it's starting to summarize. All this data is coming out of Snowflake. To build this agent, let me show you some things. So the first thing I'll show you is, here's the runbook. So what's the one thing I said? The only person that can actually build agents are the people that understand the process. That is not a Python dev. So here is our context. Here's the user request. All of the different, this is what's used to define it, and this is what we'll be building in a second. The second thing you're seeing is a set of actions in here. And so you're seeing the different actions. You're seeing SERPer, which lets me go out to Google and do some research. You're seeing our data sources. In this case, Snowflake has the data. And you're seeing all the different work. Noticing in here, our LLM's Claude Floor. If I go to edit here, I could go choose a different LLM. So if I want to use OpenAI rather than Claude, which model do I want to use? I want to use GPT-4.1. I can choose which ones of these I would want to. How many of you ever want to select a model? This is 3, 4, 5. The reality is very few people actually know the right models to select. So this is a good example where our engineering thinks it's awesome that we expose that to you. I would argue we should pick it for you because we know the complexity of the work. So we can do a better job picking than you can. Noticing down here adding actions. If I wanted to do something like, once I've done this analysis, I want it to email to my boss, right? I want it to summarize this and email it. I can come here and say search. I want to add mail in here. I want to use Microsoft Mail on this agent. These are all the different actions that are available to the agent. I could add that action. And now it's going to say, okay, now we've got an additional action here called Microsoft Mail. I'll come back and show you that in a second. But this is how we define and use an agent. Have I put anybody to sleep yet? Yeah.
Like when you say that it would be great if you could choose the model, do you have a way of like estimating the cost per model before you run it?
We don't. We can show you, and I'll show you in a second, where we where we summarize your tokens and we summarize the number of runs, but we don't have a great way to estimate it. It's a really good question. And the part of the problem with LLMs is the cost on the input token versus the cost on the output token is appreciably different. So we can track those things, and we integrate to, if we looked at this, I'm gonna cancel out of this, or actually I could go down here to advanced options. You'll see all the details of the agent, but you'll also see I can plug into Langsmith here, so it can funnel everything into Langsmith. Langsmith gives me full visibility into every single thing that was sent in and out of that LLM. I can also plug into open telemetry, so OTel. So if I want to integrate into a Splunk or a Datadog or any of that kind of stuff, I can feed all my information into that as well to get that information. Awesome. So all this, I'm a half an hour in and we still haven't built an agent yet. This is a bad day. Let me jump in and build you one. So let's go home. Let's go build an agent. So now we've said, let's go build an agent. We're jumping in. I'm going to hope my internet gets a little faster here. Can everybody go off the internet for a second?
Ask a question while that's loading?
Yes. I'm getting nervous.
Is it, so I looked to play with it the other day, but is it, when I got stopped on the website when it landed on, like within Snowflake, so is it only supported in Snowflake?
Great question. It is not. So it's supported in AWS as our first deployment. Our second option is Snowflake today. And you'll see us releasing more. We're doing what's called Semaphores Portable Agent Runtime, which will allow us to deploy to Azure and anywhere else you want. Azure and Google will be the next two. But today it's AWS and Snowflake, and within Snowflake. Good question. So what do we want to do? I want to build an invoice processing agent. How are we doing so far, team? Can everybody do that?
Yeah.
This is awesome for 4:30. Not everybody's sleeping yet. We're doing good. Invoice processing assistant. Let's call it Invoice Pro to name it something different. So what you're going to see is as I'm going through this, I'm iterating on building the agent. So each step of the way, it's going to help me do this. Does that name look good? Invoice Pro? Yep, the name's good. I told it was going to do invoice processing, so now it's going to tell me, hey, it's an intelligent assistant designed to automate the processing of invoices, extract key information, validate data, and organize it for seamless integration into financial systems. Good enough for now, but I could definitely update that with better description if I want to. But I'm going to say that's a perfect description. Awesome. You're looking pretty serious up front there. So what it did is it said, okay, you're going to do invoices. If you're going to do invoices, I got to ask you some questions to do this right. So let's go. Who can read through these? 1, what type of data fields do I want? I'm lazy. Use all standard header and detail fields. How about that? Question 2, what are the formats? PDF is the format that we receive. I could put multiple in here. Should the agent integrate with any specific financial systems? Yes, comma. Please push the data into an Excel spreadsheet, and after that, update. And you'll see in a second. And then we'll say update Salesforce. Fair enough, team? Are we going to make this work?
So how are you connecting to Salesforce? Through API, MCP, or are you integrated through like a Zapier?
You guys, should we let him ask any more questions?
Yes.
What do you guys think? Teasing you. You'll see it in a second. And I'm absolutely teasing you. We'll connect through standard Salesforce APIs. But the right question is there also MCPs? And in the case of Salesforce, they're just releasing MCPs. MCP is a standard access for the LLM to call out to invoke kind of any system. The good news is it's probably the most rapidly growing, and let me just be a good straight person here and just show you how rapidly growing it is. I might have deleted that slide. So I pulled out a bunch of slides out of this deck because I wanted to build instead. But an MCP, if you look at the hockey stick, almost every application out there is now exposing MCPs. So SAP Joule is a set of MCPs that you can access. So we're using Salesforce directly, but we could use MCPs if it's exposed. So great question. And I'll show you that in a second because we'll add it.
Have you noticed a value add for like switching over from a, oh sorry. Have you noticed a value add, like changing from REST APIs to MCP on a particular service?
The MCP is more open-ended,
Uh-huh.
but it's also less predictable. So when you call a REST API, it does the same thing 100% of the time. There's never a change because you're
Right.
code to code, right?
Yeah.
I'm invoking Python code. If I use MCP, it's using intelligence. So there's processing on the back end of the MCP that uses an LLM. So there is still some level of hallucination that could happen on the back end of it, depending on how you implement the MCP. So I would say it's more accurate to use an API than MCP, but it's a lot more work.
Oh, okay. But if it was something that you wanted to do hundreds of thousands of times and you wanted the same result, REST API.
I would probably use a REST API.
Cool.
Unless there's an explicit MCP for that function within that application.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
And this isn't actually going to work because I don't have a Salesforce update. I've only got a Salesforce read. So I'll warn you now that this one's not going to work, but you'll get to see that in a second. So now is what it did is it generated the runbook for me. So it said, here's your objective, here's your set of instructions. Noticing here it's explicitly saying read the text. Noticing I was really lazy, so I just said use standard fields. So it grabbed some standard fields for the header, some standard fields for the line item. Organization, it's going to create a workbook, it's going to create a worksheet, and then it's going to add the rows to it. Then it's going to go to Salesforce, query the data, update the contact, and update the deal. And then it's done. And then you're seeing in here some error handling. You're seeing some PDF, Excel, Salesforce is the actions references in here. Helpful? Do we think it looks good? I'm going to live on the edge and say yes. Awesome. So what it's doing now is it's saying, okay, you want to do this. I need to figure out which actions I need to call, which tools I want to call in the LLM to make this happen. So now it's going to go out and it's going to do its work. I wish we had faster LLMs. This is one of those times where latency does matter, especially for demos, but it's going through doing the work of building out the actions library. If I wanted a custom action, it would automatically stub that in, the Python code for me, so that then I could go plug into your library. In this case, noticing I've got Excel, so it went out and picked the actions. So Excel, Salesforce, and PDF. The only one that requires access control is Salesforce. So I'm going to cheat and go down here and say, okay, we got the client ID. By the way, all these things that I'm doing are coming off of our servers, our secret, and our domain URL. So what it just did there is that went out to our server. We're connected to a production area. And it said, here's your 3 characteristics. It doesn't show me them, but it lets me go enter them to go use. That's controlled based on who has access to that and who has controls. So we're good. I'm going to say proceed with agent generation. And it's going to go through it. It will do all the work, and we'll get to a deploy. Depending on how fast our network is, we will get everything packaged up. And now we're deploying our first agent. Anybody else a little nervous? I'm a little nervous, honestly. We'll see how we did. I wish this was a little faster. We got it. So now we've created the Invoice Pro agent, right? If we go look at the runbook, here's the runbook that it said. Noticing the explicit, to your point earlier, the explicit calls in here, and there's an action reference down at the bottom that highlights all the actions that we're going to use or all the tools we're going to use. I can do as many iterations to this as I want to. I can do as many updates, etc. We can also see our actions library in here. Permissions. Noticing it took my default LLM, which is OpenAI GPT 4.0. You know, I'm going to edit this one. I'm going to change it to Bedrock, and I'll go to 4 Sonnet. So I can define my defaults, but I think Bedrock is a little better, and I think Anthropic is better. So now we're ready to go. Are we gambling to see if we're lucky? Let's give it a try. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go grab 4 invoices, assuming there was an email that came in, it picked off, the same as this is doing in a worker agent. We'd pick up that email and process it. It's going to go take it, and we'll see how we do. How'd we do?
At least people know.
Not worth a crap. What the heck? I do wonder if it's our network, but it's always better to blame it on network than our product, right?
Yeah, I had a question on the runbook. Once you deploy an agent, can you go and alter the runbook for changes in the business process, schemas, actions, and without redeploying the agent, can you still kind of keep doing that?
2 different things. So we would iterate on it, but you would do it you would always do it at design time, is what but like I could deploy this, and then I could deploy a V2 of this. When I deploy a V2, it will leave out in production V1 running, and I can go out to production and say, now update to V2. Does that make sense? So I'll show you that in a second. But we don't, goes back to, I want predictability of my agents. My number 1 goal is predictability. So what I don't want it to do is randomly get smart and come up with better ideas of how to do stuff. So is what we do is we let you version this, and then we can say when we want to apply that version.
And how are you storing the information in the runbook? Is it through a RAG type framework or?
It's Markdown is what we're using. So a couple things in here, and I'll show you. So it just went through. I can say proceed. Let's just get a little bit further on this before I start showing you guys what else you can do with it. So it's going through. So noticing it's read those 4 invoices. It's summarized those. I told it to proceed. Now it's going to query the data. It's going to do some work. And I could keep iterating because this will need some iteration to be right. But is what I could do, I want line item totals, unit price, I want line item discount potentially. All of this stuff I could come in here and add. So all of this stuff is purely editable. You're going to have a full chronology here, so I could go back to the previous one if I wanted to as I go through this. This is all marked down too, so I can do it anywhere. So now it's completing, it's querying, it's going through the work, 4 invoices, it summarized the total. The Excel file was created, Salesforce, there was no duplicate records. If you look here, I'm going to go grab this. I'm going to put it, let me think. Where's the best place? I'll put it on my desktop, and we'll see. And I'm not going to keep going on this far, but let's go to desktop. What was it? Data. So there's the 4. So we just did some work. Definitely not right. I don't even have an update, so I know the Salesforce isn't going to complete correctly. It's only got a query, so it's only going to go validate there. It's not already there, but it's not going to complete it. But you saw a lot of it done. Let me show a couple last things. So everything we just did in this agent, I'm going to show you a couple more things while we're doing it. So if I go to edit agent here, advanced options, you're going to see the version. So I can start versioning so that when I deploy out, it will know to update the version or not. Conversation starters, this is where I want to give a conversation guide if I want to, because I got a user group of 100 people using this agent. I want to tell them how to use it correctly. Those are conversation guides, and then things like history, etc. If I go cancel on that, the last thing I want to highlight are the last couple of things. So opening your ID. Everything we just did, how many of you guys have ever touched VS Code, Cursor, Windsurf? Everything I just did, I'm going to toggle over and scare some people that don't like coding tools. This is Cursor. Everything we just did is full plugins to Cursor as well. So noticing publish back to our studio, import actions, create action packages. So I can have my Python development team working with my line of business, but both in the right environment. Like I don't want my line of business does not want to be playing with Cursor, and my developers don't want to be playing with some studio environment, right? So I can toggle back and forth. And it's got all of the capabilities in here. The other thing I'll say is, say we're done with this. Now I can just publish this. So say this agent's completely done, we're good. I'm going to hit publish. I'm going to show you what this is doing. I'm going to toggle over here So this is my browser. I'm going to go into our control room now. So think we just developed that in Studio. Now I'm publishing it up. When I publish it up, this is what we call control room. So this is what's running in your cloud environment, AWS or Snowpark Container Services, soon to add Azure and Google to that. So the first things, each agent has a different set of access. So in this case, you can see the different workspaces. So we've got a support workspace, we've got sales workspace, finance workspace, HR. Each one of these has different sets of agents. So if I go to HR, it's got the HR compensation analyst agent, right? It's got the CV internal review agent. So when I get 100 CVs for a job, how do I figure out the top 5? I'm guilty of using an agent to go, here's my 100, give me the top 5 based on this job description, right? It's a massive amount of time that saves me. So that's an example. But this is how we start controlling access. All of this, we also have agent compute, so this is where it processes, so what we call ACE environments, or agent compute environments. All those secrets, if you notice in here, here's our Salesforce secrets that I used earlier. So everything is set up in here. And then all of our configurations, things like LLMs, OAuth providers. I can control what actions people have access to, all the organizational structure, et cetera. And we got full audit of everything that gets deployed, everything that's ran out there, so we can see what's going on.
I got a question here.
Yep.
Yeah. So earlier at the beginning, you mentioned about security and accuracy.
Correct.
So I assume that's a big topic, security. So let's talk about accuracy. So before you publish anything, where is the human intervention, human review during the whole process? And so using multiple agents, the assumption is that you trust the accuracy of the agent. For very simple problems and issues, probably much easier to identify and verify. For complicated issues, matters, how assure that you will trust that there's no bias or so-called errors in the whole process?
Yes, there's a couple of pieces to it. There's trust in the business user writing the right runbook, writing the right definition of the agent. That's number one trust factor. So we iterate. We've had customers that have done 1,000 iterations of one agent to get it right, because we get to see that. And it just takes time and effort. That's writing the runbook, testing it, writing it, testing it. One of the things over the next 3 weeks to a month here we'll be releasing is for each one of those tests, when it's right, I can flag it as an evaluation test. And then if I want to go rerun it, I could go rerun it against all those evaluations to see what my output is. But that still requires me to build up that evaluation list. So I still need to have a user that knows what good and knows what bad is. There's no magic in this. So I still got to have a user that defines it and then goes through the testing and then knows what's good and bad. And the second thing is whenever I make changes, I rerun through all those evaluations. That's something that's coming in about 3 weeks. It's a really good question. It's one of the things we're adding. The second trust is once I'm deployed, who gets to, and let me qualify. I've published it, that means it landed in the gallery. And any business user can publish it, they can't deploy it. So as an example, we published Invoice Pro, which is right here, but noticing it's not been deployed yet, which is the new agent, right? So now I still have the checkpoint to go validate it. So if I want like a COE that looks at every agent to validate before it gets completely deployed out, this gives another control point to allow the admins to go look at every agent before it gets deployed out.
So for a small data set, it's probably much easier to verify.
Correct.
For a multiple large data set, how can you assure that the data set itself or the selection of the data set is actually bias-free or minimize the bias during the whole data preparation process to begin with?
Good question. So the way we work through this process is, how would you do that today with the humans doing it? If I hired 20 humans today, let them go, how do I validate that they're doing the right job?
Performance reviews, evaluations.
Yeah, so that's why we give you evaluations, we give you validations. We also, if you remembered earlier, we publish everything out to Langsmith, but we also publish out everything out to Open Telemetry. So we can go monitor and track every agent and what happened with every agent. But there's a reason, it's a great question, and we can only do as much as you can do, is what I'll say. There's no magic in agents, just like there's no magic in humans, right? There is mistakes that can happen. So our number one goal is to do as much testing, set up the evaluations, and run those regression tests before we deploy out. And then, I skipped over, we'll hit it at the end, but when we talk about the deployment journey, one of the things for our more successful customers, they'll build out an agent COE that reviews every agent before it goes out to production to make sure there's been some testing done. It's a great question. It's a really good question. Good question. I wanted to show the workspaces. You could show the gallery, the Invoice Pro here. If I wanted to, noticing it's at 0:1, I could hit deploy here. That would deploy it out. It will take a little bit, but when I go through this, it's going to go ask me all the questions to go get it deployed out. So it's going to walk me through the configuration, connections, etc. I'm not going to go through that whole process, but here's where it's going to say, where does it go? Invoice Pro is in finance. What large language model do I want to use, etc. in here. And it's going to keep going through. This is where observability, I could plug into Datadog or Splunk or any of the observability frameworks. And as I go through this, the next question will be, remember that Salesforce? I need to, now, was I at dev Salesforce? Now I want to go to prod Salesforce, that type of stuff. 10 minutes? Awesome. So this would take you through the life cycle. The last thing is once these are deployed out, and I'll just try to think of sales as a good example. When I go into here, I can see the agents that are available. To go use one of these agents, I go to what's called Workroom. So now we're in Workroom. So once an agent, I just went through the administrative side of saying I want to deploy this. This is where the end users are going to go consume this agent. Does that make sense? So if I come in here, I said, hey, I want to use my personal assistant and chat with it. It's going to require me, now it's my personal assistant, so it's going to connect to my calendar in this case. And this is something I use every day. So now you can see what my schedule was for today. And if I go new chat, it'll go through and do it, but you'll see here, here's my meetings for the day. Don't look too close because you'll probably see something in there I shouldn't be doing today. Noticing the ones in green, by the way, I told the runbook to highlight in green anything with customers or non-semaphore people, because I want to know the ones that are with customers or partners, et cetera, versus the ones that are internal meetings. But here's where, what were my customer meetings for the week? And I probably shouldn't show that, so I'm going to go somewhere else, but that would show me all my lists. So it's a way for me to go look at all that stuff. But this is Workroom. Let me jump back in and just finish up here. We've only got 8 minutes. Anybody care about the use cases for agents?
Yes. One question I have. So you may have the inventory of the agents that you have picked across, right? Do you have the pre-inventory to select from based on the use cases?
We don't. And we're building that up. I shouldn't say it like that. One of the most common questions is, Jamie, why don't you just give me a library of agents? Why can't I just go grab the invoice processing agent or the X or the Y or the Z? We honestly, as much as here's some examples of the different use cases, and I think we're going down that path, we have not built up the library yet. We're a startup, we only got so many people. We find that most of our customers don't want to publish back to that library. So we're spending all of our time building really cool product, and we're spending less time building agents and letting the customers build agents. So it's something we will be launching a library in the next 2 to 3 months here, because we know we need to do that, we just haven't done it yet. It's a great question. Go ahead.
Are there any integrations with UI, so graphical user interfaces at this point?
I skipped over it, but so one of the things that I should have hit more on, I just showed you Workroom, which is our environment that you'd send to your business users to let them log in and do work. But what we also do is an agent API, so we can plug into your experience if you want to. And the last ones that we've been seeing a lot more of is we can expose agents out via Teams or Slack. So directly within Teams, you can have an agent channel that they're doing work with, or within Slack, I can do it. So those tend to be the the big buckets of where we expose agents to. But we do have a full agent API, so we can plug into a third-party portal. Good question, really good question.
All right, this will be my last question. First off, that's much easier to use than N8N, so it looks like a great product, but are you building the
Can I quote
architecture
you on
to
that?
support? Yeah, you can. I'm a Mind Studio ambassador, not N8N, so you can quote me on that. But are you building this architecture because swarms are going to be more? You know, your HR department may want to deploy an entire swarm of agents. One scrapes a background, one scrapes a social media, one checks a resume, one prepares a question specifically for a candidate. Like, are you deploying this? Are you building this in a way that we'll be able to deploy swarms of agents and have those facilitated by an orchestrating agent?
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example of one of our great customers on the West Coast. They do procurement. So their first one is the RFQ process. Anybody been through an RFQ process? Tell me that process doesn't suck. Like literally the suckiest process there is. Because I got to beg somebody in procurement to care, and then I got to beg them to go find vendors that we can release to, and then they got to do a lookup online. And then once they got that list, they need to send out an RFQ, even if it's for the simplest laptop. And then we get a response back, and then we go through that whole cycle. So that's 5 agents that they built out, as an example. But they got what they called the co-pilot agent, which is their top-level procurement agent. And then they got 4 supporting agents for that. One is for research, one is for the data access to their existing procurement list, supply list, and then there's another research agent, and then there's the RFQ sender agent. So, great question. And yes, we can have hierarchies of agents, and we can have as many as you want. Great question. Team, I'm going slow. I'm getting yanked off stage here. This is some areas, I'm not going to read through these, but this gives you some context of the different things that we're seeing. Like, when we look at customer adoption, we don't look at 1 agent. We don't look at 2 agents. That sucks. And I'll say it boldly, that sucks. We want to see 20, 30, 40 agents deployed. To do that, I can't hire an arsenal of Python developers to do that. We have to have it driven like you just saw today, where it's runbook driven by the line of business, so each line of business can be doing the work. And that's what we think is important. And here's an example of one customer where it went through their org. I'm not going to walk you through each one of these use cases, but these represent a bunch of the different use cases that are out there. The most common easy ones are things like AP Help Desk. How many suppliers say, hey, why haven't you paid me yet? They got 10 people sitting up behind this, literally taking the inbound email, looking up the invoice, hey, we sent the check yesterday. Like, those are great agent things. They're not high value, but they're extremely high value, and that it just cuts down work. Import, export, one of our European customers, import, export docs when they go across customs lines is a big deal for them. I'm going to skip through. In wrap, I didn't expect to go so slow. Don't let perfect get in the way of a good enough. Get started. Like, the number one thing I would tell you is the opposite of kind of every session I sat in where there's a heavy kind of do simple things. Do a personal assistant that literally helps you look at your calendar each day and say, what's the important meetings versus not? But start down the path of doing agents. You'll get better over time, but you got to get started. LLMs are improving, so what didn't work yesterday works today and will improve tomorrow. So the LLMs themselves are getting better. Learn how to write runbooks. For the rest of your natural-born life, you will be doing the equivalent of runbooks, which is a set of prompts that orchestrates a set of work. And if you don't have access to data to validate your assumptions in agents, you'll be wrong. So assume you're wrong if you don't have it. I'm going to skip over these, and we'll look at that. How'd I do? I'll stay here for any questions, team. Hopefully we kept you guys awake. Really good questions. I honestly really enjoyed this, so hopefully it was useful. Thank you all.